Scott, well, the manhunt for an escaped Arkansas inmate who used to work as a police chief in Gateway, Arkansas, is now on day 3. Grant Harden escaped from the North Central Unit near Calico Rock on Sunday afternoon. He was serving sentences at the prison for murder and rape. Both of those crimes happened in Benton County.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
May 25, 2025. 2:55 p.m. A quiet afternoon in the sleepy town of Calico Rock, Arkansas. Or so it seemed. A man once entrusted with protecting the very people now running in terror, breaking free from the prison walls that had confined him for years. His escape would send ripples through every small town, every family, and every law enforcement agency within miles. Grant Harden, a man who once wore the badge with pride, now finds himself on the other side of the law. But it's not just Harden. Days before, another escape was brewing, in New Orleans. A city soaked in rain and shadows, where 10 men vanished into the night. 2 still on the loose, making the entire country hold its breath. As the clock ticks, questions mount. How does a man, trained to uphold the law, break every rule and vanish without a trace? And how long can they all remain hidden before the search closes in? What happens when the hunted know the land better than the hunters? These men, Harden, Groves, Massey, they've become more than just criminals on the run. They've become a national nightmare, a test of every system meant to protect the innocent. And the worst part? We still don't know where they are. But every day, the walls are closing in. The small, remote town of Calico Rock, Arkansas, has just experienced a nightmare no one saw coming. It's a quiet town, nestled among the rolling hills and thick forests of northern Arkansas, a place where everyone knows everyone, where trust runs deep. But today, that trust is shattered, ripped apart in the blink of an eye. A man, once entrusted with the responsibility to protect the public, has now become the very thing he swore to fight against. Grant Harden, once the police chief of Gateway, a small town not far from here, has just escaped from the North Central Unit, a maximum security prison. Harden, a man whose very job was to enforce the law, had spent years behind bars after being convicted of unspeakable crimes, murder and rape. But now, on this fateful afternoon, he has disappeared without a trace. And the calm that had defined Calico Rock for so long has been replaced by a creeping sense of fear, the kind you feel when you know the predator is already among you. In those first few minutes, the small town of Calico Rock was unaware of what had just happened. The escape wasn't noticed until 15, maybe 20 minutes later, but by then, Harden was already gone. A routine count revealed that he was missing, and the panic set in quickly. Prison officials scrambled, local authorities rallied, and soon, the entire state of Arkansas was on high alert. But here's the thing. Harden wasn't just any criminal. He wasn't some random thug who had slipped through the cracks. No. Harden had been a police chief, someone who knew the system inside and out, someone who understood how law enforcement thought and acted. It's why his escape wasn't just a break for freedom, it was a calculated, cold maneuver that left a trail of questions. How did he do it? And why had he planned this escape now, after so many years of being locked away? Grant Harden wasn't the only one on the run. Just days before his escape, New Orleans was rocked by its own prison break, one that would set the stage for an even larger manhunt, this time spanning across multiple states. May 16, 2025. 10 inmates escaped from the Orleans Justice Center in New Orleans. They didn't use brute force. No. They used something much simpler, a small hole behind a toilet, a piece of stolen equipment, and a clear disregard for the guards they had outsmarted. They didn't leave quietly either. One of the inmates left a taunt on the wall, "Too easy LOL." It wasn't until hours later that the escape was discovered. 7 hours had passed before anyone realized the inmates were gone. And by then, the fugitives had a massive head start. They vanished into the rainy New Orleans night, leaving behind nothing but a hole in the wall and a message that mocked the very system that had failed to keep them in check. Two of those escapees are still on the run. Derek Groves, 27, and Antoine Massey, 32. Both men had committed unspeakable crimes of their own. Groves, convicted of a double murder during Mardi Gras in 2018, a crime so brutal it left the city reeling. Massey, with a long history of violence and escape, charged with domestic abuse, strangulation, and theft of a motor vehicle. Now, these two men, along with the rest of the escapees, are part of a sprawling manhunt that has involved local, state, and federal law enforcement. But after the events in Calico Rock and New Orleans, one question remains: how far can these men go before they're caught? How long before they run out of places to hide, or worse, before they take the next life? As the clock ticks, the question isn't just about where these men are hiding anymore. It's about what they might do next. Each one of these men has proven they will stop at nothing to remain free, and in the eyes of those hunting them, they are ticking time bombs, just waiting to explode. Hardin's escape was just the beginning. And the hunt for Groves and Massey is far from over. The law enforcement agencies involved are determined to close in on these fugitives, but the question still hangs in the air: will they ever be caught, or will they remain ghosts, haunting the very communities they once terrorized? To understand how these men could escape, we must first understand who they are. Let's begin with Grant Hardin. Born and raised in the small town of Gateway, Arkansas, Hardin was the epitome of a small-town success story. He was a local boy who made good, earning respect from his community with his hard work and determination. As a young man, he joined the police force, quickly rising through the ranks. His ambition led him to become the police chief of Gateway, where he was seen as a protector, a trusted figure. The community admired him, and he seemed to embody everything that was good and right about law enforcement. But beneath the badge, there were darker shadows. Hardin's rise to power was not without its cracks. By all appearances, he was a man of integrity, but those closest to him began to see the cracks in his armor. In February 2017, Hardin's past caught up with him in a way no one expected. He was convicted of the brutal murder of James Appleton, a local man, whose death sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community. A trusted protector turned predator. The details of the crime were horrifying. Hardin had been involved in an argument with Appleton, one that escalated into violence. The community was left stunned, struggling to reconcile the image of their chief of police with the man who had taken an innocent life. It was a moment that no one in Gateway would ever forget. Hardin's conviction was the end of one chapter but the beginning of another. He was sentenced to decades in prison, but even behind bars, his story didn't end. His escape from the North Central Unit on May 25, 2025, was executed with the precision of someone who had been trained in the very methods law enforcement uses. Hardin wasn't just a criminal, he was a former officer, a man who understood the system inside and out. So, when he broke free, it was no accident. The question now: how did he pull it off? And more importantly, where did he go? Then, there's Derek Groves. Derek Groves, 27, was a product of violence. In 2018, during Mardi Gras, he was convicted of a double murder so brutal, it sent a chill through New Orleans. The victims were two men, gunned down in the midst of celebration. But Groves' motivations for the murders were never entirely clear. He gave no remorse, no explanation that satisfied the public or the authorities. He was, and still is, a man whose capacity for violence is undeniable. Groves was always a man with a chip on his shoulder. Raised in the underbelly of New Orleans, where the streets never sleep, he grew up hard, learning early that the world wasn't a kind place. His disregard for human life led him down a dark path, a path that ultimately ended in 2 dead bodies and a life sentence. His escape from Orleans Justice Center, though, only added to his notoriety. It was as if the very system that had confined him was just another obstacle to him. A challenge to be beaten. And beat it, he did. His actions in prison were no less violent, but it was his calculated escape, and the way he vanished, that made his legend even more terrifying. Derek Groves doesn't just break the law, he bends it, takes it apart, and leaves destruction in his wake. And then, there's Antoine Massey, a man whose history with escaping custody is almost as notorious as his criminal record. Massey, now 32, has been escaping from various detention facilities since he was just 15. His list of escape attempts reads like a playbook of the most daring and dangerous ways to get away from the law. From juvenile detention centers to cutting off ankle monitors, his ability to evade capture has been legendary, and it only fueled his sense of invincibility. But Massey's history wasn't just about breaking free. His violent past became even darker as he grew older, culminating in charges of domestic abuse, strangulation, and theft of a motor vehicle. The man who had once been a runaway teen was now a convicted criminal with a violent streak that could match any hardened criminal. His story wasn't just about escape, it was about destruction. A life left in ruins wherever he went. A man shaped by trauma, lies, and manipulation. Antoine Massey was never meant to stay in one place for long. He had been running for most of his life, and each time he was caught, it was only a matter of time before he broke free again. Would he ever stop running? Would he ever stop hurting people? Each of these men, Hardin, Groves, and Massey, had something in common: they were not just criminals, they were products of their environments. Raised in chaos, violence, and fear, they became experts at navigating the system, experts at breaking it. But the question remains, where are they now? What drives a man like Hardin, a man who once served as a protector, to become a predator? And what does Groves, with his cold detachment, have planned next? For Massey, who has never known a life without escape, how long will his luck last before it finally runs out? Hardin's escape was no spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a carefully crafted plan, months, perhaps even years in the making. His deep knowledge of law enforcement tactics, combined with his familiarity with the terrain around the North Central Unit, gave him an edge that no one saw coming. But what really happened that day? What was the trigger that set him free? Hardin's outfit was no accident. A bulletproof vest, black attire, and a baseball cap, all expertly designed to mimic the uniform of a correctional officer. For someone with his background, this wasn't just a disguise. It was a masterstroke of deception, one that made him look like he belonged. And with the right gear, Hardin was able to move undetected through the prison, past guards who never suspected a thing. Was he planning this for weeks, or did a single window of opportunity present itself? Authorities didn't realize Hardin was missing until 15, maybe 20 minutes later. By that time, he was already well on his way. The weather, the terrain, everything worked in his favor. It had been raining heavily earlier that day, providing him with a natural cover. The thick forests, caves, and abandoned buildings in the area gave Hardin countless places to hide. Authorities had mere hours to track him down, but with every passing minute, it became more and more likely that he'd slip through their fingers. As law enforcement scrambled to search the surrounding area, Hardin was a step ahead, a ghost in the woods. Arkansas's rugged landscape, the caves, the forests, had become his refuge. A place where an experienced man could disappear forever, blending in with the terrain he knew so well. And with every minute that ticked by, the fear grew: could Hardin disappear into the Arkansas wilderness, never to be found again? Meanwhile, in New Orleans, the escape was even more daring, more elaborate. 10 men, a hole in a wall, and a plan that seemed ripped from the pages of a crime thriller. It was like something out of a movie. Using stolen blankets and clippers, these inmates managed to cut a hole through the thick wall of their cell. It wasn't easy, but with patience and sheer will, they made it happen. The escape was nothing short of miraculous, especially considering the conditions they were under. And when they squeezed through the hole, leaving nothing but a few discarded tools and a message written on the wall, they knew they'd pulled off something extraordinary. They left behind a message. Too easy, LOL. A taunt. A victory. For a few hours, the escape was their triumph, a symbol of their defiance. But it was more than just a message. It was a declaration. These men had outsmarted the system, and for a brief moment, they were untouchable. The arrogance was palpable, a clear indication of how confident they were in their escape. But by the time the prison staff realized what had happened, it was already too late. The inmates were long gone. The remaining fugitives, slipping through the cracks of a broken system, had a head start. The search intensified, but the damage was done. The prisoners, now out on the streets, were lost in the labyrinth of New Orleans. Authorities launched a citywide search. New Orleans became a pressure cooker of activity, the streets crawling with law enforcement, helicopters circling above, and the city's shadows providing the perfect cover for men on the run. The rain didn't help. The slick streets, the hidden alleyways, the underbelly of the city, it was all working in the escapees' favor. As the hours passed, it became clear, finding these men wouldn't be easy. And the clock was ticking.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
Of the 10 who escaped, 8 were quickly recaptured. But 2 remained on the run, Derek Groves and Antoine Massey. Their crimes were as brutal as their escape was cunning. Groves, a cold-blooded murderer, and Massey, a violent repeat offender with a history of evading the law, had now become the most wanted men in New Orleans. Groves, convicted of a double murder during Mardi Gras, and Massey, a man who had escaped custody multiple times before, were now free once again. And with each passing minute, the fear that they were slipping through the cracks of the justice system grew. Could they be anywhere by now? How far could they go before the authorities closed in on them? 2 high-profile escapes. 2 separate manhunts. And as these fugitives remain at large, the question remains, how long can they keep running before their past finally catches up with them? The manhunt for Hardin, Groves, and Massey is far from over. Each of them is dangerous, skilled, and determined to stay free. But how long can they evade capture? In the end, only time will tell. The hunt is on. The urgency in the air is palpable as law enforcement agencies, local, state, and federal, have all been called in to track down these men. What began as a small-scale search in the forests of Arkansas and the streets of New Orleans has now blossomed into a sprawling, multi-state operation. The clock is ticking, and with each passing minute, the sense of dread only deepens. Because the longer these men remain at large, the harder it becomes to capture them. The more ground they cover, the more they slip through the cracks of a broken system. Every resource available is being thrown at the manhunt. Helicopters sweep the sky, drones map out the landscape, and K-9 units scour the woods. But despite their best efforts, the terrain is vast, and the fugitives are expert at hiding. Arkansas, a state dense with caves, forests, and uncharted land, has become their haven. Every day, the authorities inch closer, but so do the fugitives, always just out of reach. Groves, Massey, and Hardin, each with their own skill set, each with their own ways of evading capture, are proving to be a near impossible puzzle for law enforcement to solve. As the investigation heats up, one question remains: how long will these men continue to elude capture? How long can Hardin remain hidden in the caves of Arkansas, a man with a deep knowledge of the land? How far can Groves and Massey run before their luck finally runs out? Time is not on their side. Each hour that passes makes it more difficult for these fugitives to stay ahead. The longer they remain free, the greater the chance they'll slip through the fingers of those hunting them. As the manhunt continues, the authorities know they're getting closer. Tips are flooding in from the public, and every new lead brings the possibility of a breakthrough. The media coverage is relentless. Flyers with the faces of the escapees are plastered on telephone poles and store windows across Arkansas, Louisiana, and beyond. The public is on edge, yet hopeful that someone, anyone, will recognize a face and finally point them in the right direction. There's a sense of urgency in the air, a ticking clock that feels more like a countdown to something that could end in tragedy. But the clock isn't just ticking for the law enforcement agencies, it's ticking for the fugitives too. Every day that passes, the net tightens, and the question becomes not if they'll be caught, but when. Groves and Massey, both seasoned criminals with a history of escape, have already shown their ability to stay hidden for longer than anyone thought possible. But the authorities have resources on their side: drones, surveillance cameras, and a nationwide network of law enforcement agencies working together. The hunt for Groves and Massey is now a race against time. Each tip that comes in is carefully evaluated, each lead followed with precision. The authorities know they're getting closer, but there's a lingering question: who will crack first? Will it be the fugitive who makes a mistake, or will it be the authorities, whose search grows more desperate by the day? As the search drags on, the pressure mounts. The authorities are stretched thin, trying to cover ground in multiple states while managing the increasing flood of tips. The desperation is evident. Local law enforcement is working alongside the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and even private investigators, all pulling in the same direction. But despite their best efforts, the longer these men remain at large, the more the fear grows. What if they're already out of the state? What if they've slipped across state lines? What if they've already made it to a country where the authorities can't reach them? The fugitive's path is now a web of uncertainty. With the help of local communities, tips continue to pour in, but they're often unhelpful, or worse, false leads. Every call is a new hope that fades into frustration when nothing comes of it. But the authorities won't stop. They can't stop. Because the moment they do, these men will be free again, and the families of their victims will never get the closure they deserve. Even as the search intensifies, it's clear that the path to capture is getting more complicated. The closer they get to Groves and Massey, the more elusive they become. Every day that passes increases the possibility that these fugitives might stay free, hiding in plain sight. And the longer they remain at large, the more questions arise. Where will they go next? What will they do? The search for these dangerous men has become an unrelenting chase. A hunt through the mountains, the cities, the shadows. The clock is ticking, and law enforcement can feel it. They know that they can't let these men slip away. The longer Groves and Massey remain free, the harder it will be to catch them. Groves and Massey are still on the run, but they're not alone. They're not just fugitives hiding out in remote corners of the country. No, these men have help. And the people aiding them are not strangers. Friends, family, and even jail staff have been implicated in aiding their escape, creating a dangerous web of lies and deceit that continues to grow as each day passes. Groves and Massey didn't escape alone. They were aided by people who had access to the system, people who knew the ins and outs of the jail, who understood how to slip through the cracks. What's even more alarming is the extent of the network that's developed around these men. Family members, friends, and even trusted employees at the Orleans Justice Center have been implicated, each one complicit in the plan to help them break free. How much longer can the fugitives rely on their support network? How far can this web of deceit stretch before it unravels? With every accomplice that gets caught, the chance of Groves and Massey slipping through the cracks becomes slimmer. But as long as their network holds, these men have a fighting chance of remaining free, at least for now. The question remains, who will crack first, and when will the walls close in on them? For Hardin, the search is becoming even more difficult. Local towns, already on edge, now live in constant fear. The presence of a fugitive with such intimate knowledge of the area is a terrifying thought. Hardin isn't just an ordinary criminal, he's a man who knows how to move through the back roads and abandoned buildings. His deep familiarity with the landscape makes him even more dangerous. It's a game of cat and mouse, but this time, it's a game where the mouse knows every corner of the maze. Hardin is more than just a fugitive. He's a shadow moving in the dark. With every checkpoint set up, every interview conducted, the authorities know they're inching closer, but it feels like a game of attrition. Every dead-end lead, every false sighting, pushes them further away from the truth. And for Hardin, every moment he remains free is a victory. With his knowledge of the area, Hardin has the upper hand. He's familiar with the caves, the wooded areas, and even the abandoned buildings that dot the land around Calico Rock. These places, which seem so innocuous to most people, have become Hardin's refuge, his safe havens. It's as if the land itself is working with him, helping him stay one step ahead of those who are desperately searching for him. It's a game of cat and mouse. And no one can predict who will win. The authorities have their resources: drones, helicopters, K-9 units, and roadblocks. But Hardin has something far more valuable: his experience, his knowledge, and his ability to stay hidden in plain sight. And as the clock ticks on, the law enforcement officers are left wondering, will they catch him? Or will Hardin remain just out of reach, a specter haunting the very community that once trusted him? In the end, the search for these fugitives is a test of patience, willpower, and persistence. The authorities are closing in, but every moment that passes, every slip-up that occurs, is another opportunity for these men to slip away. And with each passing day, the stakes grow higher. The question is no longer just about where these men are, but about how much longer they can stay ahead of those hunting them. The clock is ticking for Groves, Massey, and Hardin. The investigation is far from over, but the twists and turns keep coming. They are running out of places to hide, but the network that's helped them escape is still there, still waiting for the right moment to strike again. Groves and Massey may have a network of people helping them, but as the investigation progresses, it's becoming clear that time is running out for them. The walls are closing in, and soon, there will be nowhere left to hide. Hardin, on the other hand, has the land, the knowledge, and the experience. But how much longer can he stay hidden in a place so familiar to those who are now searching for him? Only time will tell. But as the investigation deepens, one thing is clear: the game is far from over, and the final chapter has yet to be written. As the fugitives remain on the run, questions of justice, morality, and humanity begin to resurface. With every day that passes, the consequences of their escape become more real, more urgent. For Hardin, his escape threatens to undo the fragile peace that had begun to rebuild in Gateway. The town, once trusting of the man who swore to protect them, is now left in fear. And for Groves and Massey, their actions stir new concerns about the limits of law enforcement and the lengths criminals will go to evade capture. Gateway, a small town where everyone knew each other's name, was thrown into turmoil when their former police chief, a man they had trusted, became their most dangerous criminal. For years, Hardin had been a respected officer, the man who kept the peace. He had stood alongside the community, and now, he was the very thing they feared. Can a man who once protected the public truly be forgiven? How do you move forward when someone who was supposed to keep you safe is now a fugitive, a murderer, a rapist? For Cheryl Tillman, the pain is still raw. Her brother, James Appleton, was murdered by Hardin in 2017, and now, with Hardin out on the run, the wound has been reopened. She speaks of the confusion, the anger, and the sense of betrayal she feels. Her family was never given closure, and now the man who caused their pain is free again, lurking just outside the town that once considered him a protector. I never thought this would happen. How do you look at someone who was supposed to be there for you, someone who you trusted, and see them for what they really are? A monster. He's taken everything from us, and now he's out there again, threatening everyone else. The question of forgiveness is a complicated one. Can a town that once trusted Hardin ever heal, or will the scars of his betrayal run too deep? How do you rebuild when the foundation of trust has been shattered? The sense of betrayal is not just personal but communal. Hardin wasn't just a police officer, he was a symbol of safety, a representative of the law. And now, he's a fugitive, and the town is left grappling with the aftermath. As for Groves and Massey, their actions raise new questions about the limits of law enforcement and how far criminals will go to escape justice. Their violent histories, their complete disregard for human life, have left a trail of destruction, and their escape has only heightened the fear. What lengths will these men go to next? And how far will the authorities have to stretch to catch them? Even as law enforcement continues their search, hope seems to be running thin. For officers who have spent countless hours chasing down leads, the question is no longer if they'll be caught, but when. But the longer these fugitives stay hidden, the more difficult it becomes to know how much longer they can sustain this search. They're not just chasing men on the run, they're chasing ghosts, elusive, ever-moving, and always just one step ahead. The question remains, will these fugitives be caught, or are we watching a dangerous game of hide-and-seek that will last years? Hardin, Groves, and Massey have proven they will stop at nothing to evade capture. Each of them is driven by something different, Hardin by his need to escape the consequences of his actions, Groves by a cold-blooded desire to continue his life of violence, and Massey by the adrenaline of escaping captivity, time and time again. Their motives, their histories, and their actions create a web of complexity that makes their capture even more elusive. They are not just criminals, they are men who have repeatedly outwitted the system. And with each passing day, the question becomes not just about the physical hunt but about the psychological toll it's taking on both the fugitives and those chasing them. For law enforcement, every lead is a new hope, and every dead end is a reminder of just how much further they still have to go. The psychological impact of their actions is felt far beyond the walls of the prisons and the streets of Gateway. For the families of their victims, the scars will never heal. For law enforcement, the pressure of the manhunt wears on them daily. Each new lead, each missed opportunity, only intensifies the anxiety. And for the fugitives themselves, the question remains, what will it take for them to stop running? How long can they continue to live in fear, always looking over their shoulders, knowing that at any moment, the walls could close in? Every search, every lead, every twist and turn brings them closer to the end of the chase. But with each passing day, the psychological strain on both the authorities and the public grows. The longer these fugitives remain at large, the greater the fear, not just for the victims who have yet to find closure, but for everyone else who has become a part of this terrifying story. In the end, this is more than just a manhunt. It's a story about trust, betrayal, and the consequences of actions that can't be undone. The road to justice is long and filled with uncertainty, and the question of whether it will ever be fully realized hangs heavy in the air. The fugitives may be out there, hiding in plain sight, but one thing is certain, the story is far from over.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.